So when I began to ask these questions to my youth pastors and my parents and other church leaders, I don't know, the answers weren't very helpful. In fact, some of the answers actually made me very uncomfortable. Like when I would ask things like, the people that canonized the book of the Bible, that decided which book should go in the Bible and which book shouldn't go into the Bible, I asked my Bible college teacher this. I said, were they inspired like the people that wrote the Bible? And he said, don't be stupid, of course not. And I said, well, then why do we believe they picked the right books? What if they got the wrong books? What if there's some book that didn't get added in the Bible that says, and yea, after all these things, thou shalt bow towards Jerusalem 3 times a day and say this prayer to God on high, and thou shalt be saved. And so I was freaking out. I was like, if it's like, let's vote on it, like which books we want in the Bible and which we don't, but it's not being done by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, that was really disturbing to me, even as a very young man. And I did not like those answers, but that was a better answer than, Fred, we don't ask those kind of questions, and you shouldn't either. And of course, those I would always flag, be like, return to this question later, make sure to ask that one again. And unfortunately, I started getting more and more of those red flagged questions where we don't talk about it. We don't ask those sort of questions. Or why do you have to think so much? Or why can't you just believe? Or why can't you just be happy like everyone else? And it's just like, because I want to know. I mean, I don't want to follow something that turns up to be just something that you guys made up as you're going along. And so what eventually happened was the answers I received from my religious community led me to even greater questions and deeper doubts. These questions became magnified when I left the sheltered garden of my youth and entered the wide and wild world of men. Things were not as I had been led to believe, and this brought me anxiety, anger, fear, and dread. Remember that? Angst, existential angst. So my existential journey had begun even before I knew what existentialism was, and I was full of all these things. And at this point in my life, I considered myself an agnostic. And I don't know if this is confusing. I'm trying to explain how I got to my place teaching ethics, but I've gone back to my youth to explain this journey I was taking. Yes, the Fred of my youth is not the Fred you see before you today. But he is, and he isn't. Paradoxes. Okay. So now I considered myself an agnostic. I studied the arguments of atheists and philosophical naturalists, materialists, and those are people that believe only the physical world exists. All that we really know is true is matter. And a philosophical naturalist is someone who believes that every phenomena, everything you can experience with the senses, can be explained in a natural way. Even things like love, fear, hope, emotions are just boiled down to chemical reactions in the brain. Love is really nothing more than addiction, like smoking cigarettes or wanting sweets. And we all have these different psychological addictions, and we reinforce them, but it really can come down to a chemical reaction. And so I studied these people, and even though I thought it was fascinating, and I learned a lot about human psychology and physiology, it was so empty. It was like one-dimensional life. It was just flat, because all I was now was just kind of like this bio machine, and they didn't even believe I had a soul or a spirit, or even a mind for that matter. I had a brain that was having chemical reactions, and I was just like responding to the stimuli in my environment. And I didn't even have any free will or choice. It was just like a program based on my genetics and my environment equaled what I would do. Like from wearing this orange shirt to growing a beard to however I respond to the questions you ask me. It's not a choice or freedom, it's just a reaction based on almost like dominoes. Someone, in nature, the Big Bang went and it just started the string of dominoes, and I'm kicking off more dominoes, and that's all there is to it, and I couldn't change it if I wanted to. And so, even though I looked at this, I I never could really consider myself a full-blown atheist, because when I would look at the world, at the galaxies and the wildflowers, I could just see design. I mean, I could never get past this idea, that argument from design, because I could see it in seashells and the human eye and thumbprints, and I just felt there had to be some sort of designer to put these things together. I just couldn't imagine that this was all random chance. But what I didn't know was whether this designer or God or creator or architect or whatever you wanted to call him cared about his universe, or if he was just kind of like this watchmaker that wound it up, put laws of nature there, and now we're running down, and everything's falling apart through entropy. And I certainly didn't think God cared about me. I mean, I felt no sense of presence of God in my life, which was so strange, because as a child, I was a true believer as far as I could tell. I mean, I'd sing the little Sunday school songs. I loved Jesus. I thought I felt the Holy Spirit within me. But now I was just thinking, wow, was that even real? Or was that just to please my parents, or so I could get the ribbons in my Bible, or the gold star for saying my memory verse? And it became really confusing to me. And I was really second guessing and questioning those acts I did as a child, and thinking, wow, I don't even know if that was even my beliefs or just the beliefs of my community and my people. So I called myself at this stage a seeker. And I like that because it sounded kind of romantic and like a little troubadour. And I was a seeker for truth. And I was going to look under every stone and behind every tree and see if I could find God. And this is when I began to study other philosophies and religions. I wanted to see what their take on it was and what their truth was. And instead of it helping me, though, it paralyzed me, because now I had all these competing perspectives from idealists and realists and Buddhists and Hindus and Jews and Mormons and Methodists and Baptists. And I was just like, how am I supposed to tell which is real? They all make very convincing claims. They all have true believers. And am I just a product of my culture? Did I just believe that particular flavor of truth because that's how I was brought up? And that seemed to be more and more likely to me.